Hello and welcome to Wednesday Debate Live with Taghreed Hussein here on Nile TV International. Well, tonight, a very important topic, Egyptian diplomacy and international relations. We're talking intercultural communication, as well as the new republic took it upon itself to extend its foreign relations north, south, east and west. And throughout the last years, Egypt's political leadership spared no effort in order to advance rapidly and to restore international relations across the globe and to recover Egypt's standing in international organizations. Cementing those relations with countries all over the world is definitely one of the important messages of the Egyptian foreign policy officials that they keep on doing, sending messages to prove Egypt's regional and definitely continental leadership role. Also supporting the stability in the Middle East and in Africa. The region has always been among the objectives of Egypt's foreign policy under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Well, so to speak, as we speak, His Excellency the President is participating in the activities of the US-Africa Summit, and we followed up here on Nile TV International President Joe Biden addressing this important summit and promising deals and long-term investments that would change, as he termed, the lives of the people in the future. And he talked about those future partnerships. We'll be talking about those partnerships and also the significance of the summit itself. I'm really honored to have a very distinctive panel for tonight's debate. His Excellency Mr. Mohamed Oraby, former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And always a pleasure and an honor to have with us Professor Dr. Heba Nayef, who is the Vice Dean for Instructional Affairs at the Arab Academy for Science, Technology and Maritime. Thank you so much, Dr. Heba.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you both. And we have, of course, lots in common between diplomacy and intercultural relations, state diplomacy, and at the same time people-to-people relations. Before delving into more about intercultural communication, let me ask Your Excellency about the significance of the timing itself of the US-Africa Summit. Egypt's heavyweight represented in leadership and President Sisi attending this important summit. And as we followed together the messages that were delivered on behalf of President Joe Biden before the meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, thank you very much for having me, and it is a great honor to be with Dr. Heba Nayef also in the same panel. And I think you asked a very important question, and let me say that I think the superpowers in the world discovered that the South countries like Africa and the Arab world, they are so important now in the international relations and the new world order which we are witnessing now after the war in Ukraine. So maybe from the General Assembly voting, I think each country, like let us say USA or China or Russia, they are now looking for supporting from different countries, and they are looking for voting, in favor of their resolutions in the General Assembly after the failing of the Security Council, to achieve anything in this very difficult issue, which is the war in Ukraine. So I think the three major powers, they are now looking to the Arab world and to Africa as, I would say, an important places, important votes in the General Assembly. And in the meantime, I think United States today is even sending different messages to different directions. Actually, of course, President Biden, he was addressing the African leader in Washington, D.C. But in the meantime, I think he was looking also to Russia and China. I think the Chinese efforts to revive their initiative, the road and the belt, which is, of course, has a lot of, let us say, a great deal of projects in Africa. I think he is now trying to maintain or to contain even these efforts by China and trying to offer to the African countries many projects, which I think a lot of commitments.
Right.
And in the meantime, the crucial issue is
Yes.
the implementation of these commitments.
Yes, we'll have more updates from the summit. Let's first go and follow this report on the president's diplomacy achieved big successes for Egypt's foreign policy. We'll be back.
Current regional and international circumstances have given a vivid proof that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has led Egypt's foreign policy over the past years on balanced basis that have caused an activation of Egypt's international relations with all regional, international and continental powers. This came in a book published by the State Information Service under the name of Foreign Visits and International Meetings of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, analysis and documentation of the situations and statements made by the President on international issues. The book is released by State Information Service for the 8th year in a row. President el-Sisi made several foreign visits over the past years, during which he reiterated that Egypt's policy is based on partnership and the independence of national decisions, along with enhancing consultations with all world leaders for the sake of coordinating stances regarding all files of common interest. The head of state has always been very keen on discussing regional and international developments and explaining Egypt's vision regarding regional and international conflicts. The policy, as was announced by President el-Sisi, is based on mutual respect and non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries, along with achieving the best interests of the Egyptian people through running Egypt's international relations within a framework of partnership and supporting peaceful solutions to conflicts and disputes. Egypt, under President el-Sisi, restored its major status at the regional and international levels, leading the world countries to recognize its efforts for achieving stability and sustainable development in the region. President el-Sisi has always been keen to explain, at his meetings with world leaders, national and international forums, world conferences, and in interviews and statements to different media outlets, that Egypt's policy and stance towards various issues, atop of which comes fighting terrorism and extremism and their relation with crises in regional countries. As a result of this policy, Egypt managed to host the 27th conference of the parties to the UN Framework Convention, COP27, on climate change. Without a doubt, this was a responsibility and an opportunity combined, but the country succeeded in this undertaking with flying colors, while gaining world respect, appreciation, and significant resources and support.
Dr. Heba, as we were talking with His Excellency concerning the significance of the U.S.-Africa Summit, and as we can see how intercultural communication is playing a very important and a vital role in that respect, it definitely serves politics, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
In what way does it serve our foreign relations with the world?
First of all, I'm very happy to be with His Excellency, because it's always a pleasure to sit and listen to him, actually, and to be with you, of course.
Thank you. Thank you, dear.
If we are talking about intercultural communication and this air of talk all the time, remember the summit which had Let's Talk? Remember
Yes.
this summit? I think this is a continuous policy of talking to the other and engaging in the other, engaging in Africa, with the Arab world, and later on we can talk about the soft power, of course.
Yes.
But as President Biden said, people to people. It's not just governments. Because when you talk about culture and intercultural communication, you have a tip of iceberg, which is the external culture. Something like the visit which is happening, or the summit which is happening right now, COP27, that is the external, the tip of the iceberg, which is only 10%. The 90%, the ideology, the beliefs, the values, and so on, which involves people to people, takes place within these 10%. So unless you have these 10%, you will never have a change into the 90%. The values, the beliefs, you need to see the other. And what's really interesting, which really interested me, one of the talks was saying that probably it's the same term, but you have different concepts, different interpretation of the same term. So with a summit like this and different summits, you start to find what's really the priority of other cultures. If it is freedom of speech in one country, like the US, you will find in Germany human dignity comes first. And health, rights to live in Egypt comes first. So we need to talk, and we need people to see in real, on real grounds what's really happening. And such summits would really save a lot of what we call the hard power. With talking, remember Jane Austen when she said, with talking comes love and understanding?
Yes,
with talk comes understanding, and with understanding comes love.
Opening new channels of communication, definitely. We're opening new channels of communication, Your Excellency, and strengthening this sense of partnership. Egypt at COP27 was, of course, speaking the voice of Africa at large. We're talking here at the US-Africa Summit, also this sense of integration. How does this summit comes timely in order to think Africa and think Africa globally?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It is the right time to start to indulge in such contacts between USA and the African countries. I think, as I said, the developments in the world since 2020, COVID-19, and then the invasion of Russia to Ukraine, and then the climate change, all the things, I think it has sort of challenges in front of the world, and everybody is now trying to reorganize his cards in order to cope with these new challenges. They wanted to change the subject?
I guess we are following on the developments from the US-Africa Summit. We'll be having a short break, and we'll be back bringing you from the United States more developments as they unfold. His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi had participated in a business breakfast with a number of Congress people, and His Excellency, the spokesman of the presidency, Ambassador Bassam Radi, had asserted the solidarity, the solid foundation that binds Egypt and the United States, and the role that is played by the parliamentarians of both countries in order to further boost relations, bilateral cooperation within the framework of mutual respect and common interests. His Excellency, the head of state, had asserted the importance of reaching out to the different think tanks and intellectuals at the United States within the framework of important consultations between the two friendly countries. On behalf of the Republicans, they had said that they were really honored to meet His Excellency President al-Sisi, and they saying that Egypt is considered a very much heavyweight in the Middle East region, and they had expressed the deep appreciation of the role that is played by Egypt as a cornerstone for security and stability in the Middle East region, and also in the Mediterranean and in Africa, and the success that Egypt has achieved in combating terrorism, and also Egypt's efforts in the path of peaceful coexistence under the leadership of President al-Sisi in order to achieve consensus and solutions for the different crises that are facing the region. His Excellency the President had also met with the Union of Egypt's Friends on behalf of the Democrats and the Republicans, and His Excellency presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi has highlighted that this important union had asserted the role that is played by the United States. The United States did not ever forget the role that Egypt is playing in the Middle East region, a strong role Egypt is playing in the Middle East region. Thanks for watching Nile TV International. You're still watching us, and we are live on the Daily Debate. We brought you the activities of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi from Washington, D.C., meeting important Democrats and Republicans, and also speaking to think tanks and intellectuals. And of course, it has been very wisely reflected here how Egypt's heavyweight in the region has been respected and admired and recognized in the United States. And this is intercultural communication. It's very important for the other to know what has been achieved, Dr. Heba, on solid grounds. Also, during the presidential visits, it's also a golden opportunity, you know, to brand Egypt globally, and the whole world is knowing how Egypt and how the face of life in the country has changed, how the new republic is marketed to the world. And this is another dimension of this sense of communication, the successes of the new republic being marketed to the world today. Actually,
the new republic, the second republic of Egypt, has changed not just the buildings. I'm not talking about the buildings or the industry or the achievements, or which is concrete and everybody can see it. It's the people themselves. We were talking, remember, about what happened to the Egyptians during the last 8 years, and which is surprising is that this long-term orientation of the government, of the leadership, if we can, to be more specific, of the president, okay, and with who is always talking about the determination to succeed and build distant future, which Egypt is going to be very proud of, and it deserves to be there. This has gradually been transmitted to the people. And if we are going to talk about how the other look at us, there is, you know, these which is called Hofstede Insights. It's an sort of association for businessmen who are willing to do business, or academics who are studying society and culture. Even IKEA is one of the, let's say, the clients of Hofstede Insights. Before venturing into any investment, you need to understand the culture there. Hofstede Insights, I've been actually following it for some time. I'm going to talk about one dimension in particular, the long-term orientation. Egypt, the Egyptian people scored in this dimension always 7% out of 100. And usually if you want to succeed and be a very great country, a very progressive, developed country, you need to score 80 and something. If you are talking about Germany, if you are talking about the US, other countries, China, 88, because they are long-term oriented people, which is what really surprised me is that, yes, I know we have been 7% for some time, but the jump from 7% last year to 42%, it's a message to businessmen and investors, academics like me, is that there's real change in the mentality of the people, which is actually was brought about by the leadership. Having all these projects, which talks about the distant future, taught the Egyptians how to look to the distant future themselves.
Yes, great analysis, Dr. Heba, and from here, what His Excellency is doing in the United States, and we saw this one-on-one meeting with the think tanks, with intellectuals, with the Republicans, with Democrats, portraying Egypt's vision. This sense of addressing the other, and this sense of communication, Mr. Ambassador, is very important and is very timely.
It is very important, especially when it comes from the president himself.
Yes.
So actually, President Sisi, I think he is practicing what we call the presidential diplomacy. And I think he is so clever in this regard, and he's doing his utmost when he is abroad to have, you know, a lot of contacts with different, you know, levels and different people. And today you just mentioned in that report that he met with the congressmen and senators from both parties, and I think this is a very good step because, you know, the internal, I would say, policy of United States always affect the foreign policy of the United States. So that's why I think when he addressed those people, I think he's doing, you know, a very important job. And actually, the Egyptian diplomacy is successful. It's a story of success, actually. And we can claim always that our foreign policy is always, you know, serving even the internal situation in Egypt and how we can develop, you know, this country. And as Dr. Heba said, the attempts of the president to rebuild, you know, this country, I think the Foreign Service always should be instrumental in this issue. We are not just, you know, talking to the others without any kind of targets or goals, but we should also mobilize all efforts from different countries in order to help us to develop our countries. So I think the Foreign Service of Egypt or the foreign diplomacy is doing an important role, and I think President Sisi himself is a very good, I would say, leader in this regard, and he's, you know, putting all his efforts behind the foreign policy of Egypt, and that's why we had successful stories in this regard. So Egypt today is, you know, I remember after the 30th of June 2013, a lot of people, they were not able, or let us say, accepting to deal with Egypt at that time. But now you can discover that everybody is coming to Egypt, everybody is looking to our, you know, opinion, to our assessment to the situation, and I think we are sailing in a turbulent sea, but in a very wise and prudent way.
Yes, in a very wise and in a very prudent way, as His Excellency mentions, and this is definitely portrayed in the sense of diversification of our foreign policy. We are opening up to the outside world, and Egypt as a major regional player. Dr. Heba, along with the foreign policy, definitely we have a very important role played by Egypt's soft power.
Yes.
And I'm very much honored to have Nile TV International as one of those tools of
Definitely.
Egypt's
Yes.
soft power, addressing
Yes,
the other, portraying achievements on solid grounds, telling the other how the face of life in Egypt has changed,
Yes.
what are the characteristics of the new republic, and more. So tell me more about the role of the soft power as you see it. How important, how significant?
Well, when the soft power, the term itself, when it came into existence with Joseph Nye, the Harvard professor, he was talking about soft power in his book, The Future of Powers. He was talking about hard power versus soft power, and how the three types of power, and the carrot, the stick, and the soft power, it's making other people want what you really want. What you were saying is that Nile TV as one of the tools of the soft power, because you tell the people about the facts. You let other people see the facts.
And show them.
And show them the reality, the reality of things. Egypt in particular is a very privileged country when it comes to soft powers, because we already have soft power, which we are already have this effect on people because of our history and the Egyptomania. The historical, everybody is study the history of Egypt. All the kids in schools all over the world, they study the history of Egypt. That's one thing you have that other people do not, other countries don't. And then you have, in the modern time, you have the culture, the cinema, the music, the arts, and you have all these utilities, the press, the television, even the language, the dialect, the Egyptian variation. All this is actually would help Egypt do what, if really they invest in it, reach all the people. And the people can make the leaders take changed decisions, because this is the idea. One of the examples, I think the examples about U.S. giving a little attention to the soft power is when Rumsfeld said that it doesn't mean anything to us, soft power. But in reality, it meant a lot, because when they wanted to invade Iraq, Turkey said no, because it had bad reputation. The US had bad reputation there. So losing the soft power in any country, whether for good reason or bad reasons, or on solid ground or not, is something that would affect the politics of this country. So you can achieve lots of things by public opinion, by pressure, if you if you can make the people of this country your cause.
Yes.
Defend your cause.
Yes, making the people defending your cause, and this is actually what has happened here with the different projects that has been there, like the Decent Life Initiative, like the many initiatives that we had seen here on solid grounds in Egypt, and that has been portrayed definitely on our television. Also, Your Excellency, if we're talking about, let me say, reaping the fruits of the Egyptian diplomacy in 2022, we find Egypt defending the Arab causes. And, in the heart of that came the Palestinian cause. Look at the Libyan file, Syria, making Africa a priority. Your highlight.
Yes, I think Egypt is, as I said before, instrumental in all this, regional, I would say, crisis, which is now prevailed for many years, 10 years almost. And actually, all this crisis is still, subject to be even, prolonged. And we will live with this crisis maybe for another 10 years. So that's why Egypt is exerting every effort in order to try to maintain peace and security in our region. And if you will have peace and security, this will mean that you will achieve positive results for any kind of developments in your country. So this is actually the three pillars of our foreign policy in the region: peace, security, and development. And that's why Egypt is keen to have, peaceful solution for all these crises. But unfortunately, we cannot claim that we will reach this kind of peaceful environment in the near future. But it will take some time, and we will live for some time with all these crises, which will affect actually the national security of Egypt, and meantime our efforts in order to maintain a high level of development in our country and even in our region. So everything is now a little bit complicated actually after this war in Ukraine and the ramifications of the war and the economic crisis, which is now all over the world, and of course the energy crisis, the food crisis, the fertilizer crisis. We have crisis everywhere.
Food security crisis in the world.
Absolutely. So that's why I think Egypt, as I said, is sailing in turbulent, I would say, region and turbulent sea. But thanks God that we can manage, all these things, and we have maybe a different strategies in order to tackle all these issues in a very good way. And I think the international cooperation also is so important, and that's why soft power, it will create, a soft, let us say, a sort of safety net to all, to all your efforts, and this will give you the chance to progress and to have maybe a better future in for the region and for Egypt, of course.
Yes, regarding the safety net and the youth, let me say, because it's very important to make the youth today aware of the turbulences and the challenges that are there. And you're working with the youth every day.
Yes.
And I guess you've been lucky teaching, along with His Excellency, intercultural communication.
Yes, we
do. Tell us about the points of strength, when a veteran diplomat teaches this important component, while Dr. Heba, you add to intercultural communication, but from another perspective with your academic touch.
I'm waiting for your statement now. So,
how is that? And for my statement, I would ask about its impact on the media, because also this is very important.
Okay, so they are very lucky. Our students are they are media students, by the way. So this would answer your question about the impact on the media.
Yeah.
They are very lucky to have Ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador Oraby, to teach them. We co-teach together. I'm very honored to do this. And what we have is that he gives them the experience that nobody else can do. He, in a nutshell, he sums practically volumes of books in one lecture. So I teach, for example, the language and identity, whatever, and he sums all what I say, linguistic relativity and so on, and he sums it up in one story.
Yeah.
And the message is there, and it's a story from one of the key players in the Egyptian policy. So they know that it comes from authority.
Yeah.
So it's very important for the media.
Very important, Your Excellency, and I know that you encourage the youth and you support them, and you are very much keen to let them understand these surroundings, the challenges. Very important, the point of awareness is very important.
Sure.
The President is investing in the youth and is working on the human capital for the better quality of life for all Egyptians. So tell me about the youth and diplomacy.
Well,
what do they need to know?
Well, I think, let me start by saying that, this government actually has been invested in us I would say, a lot of money. And now it is the time to return, all these debts to the government by telling the youth our experience. What is the culmination of of our experts, or let us say expertise in the past, and we can even transfer to them, many stories. Like Dr. Heba said, okay, the book has a lot of, I would say, theories, but I can give them,
life experience.
Absolutely, to translate this theory to a story.
Yeah.
So I think it will, remain in their mind forever when they are listening to this story. So I think youth is, I would say, the future of the country, and we should pay more attention, of course, to their interests, to their concerns, because, they have a lot of concerns now, and what they will do in the future after they will finish the university. But I think if you will give them some hope in the beginning, I think this will be a very important issue, and you are giving them, a sort of impetus to their future when they are talking to them with bright ideas and giving them, let us say, hope that they can achieve all the dreams if they work very hard, and also to, let us say, use our experts or our incremental actually histories and stories and many things like this. So I think we are obliged, all of us, as people, retired or let us say had long experience in the different fields, we are obliged to transfer all the things to the young people. And I think this is our duty, and we should do that in order to achieve this new republic as we are talking about.
Yes, very important, interpreting the world around us and the national cultural values.
Yes.
A very important component, and definitely it serves diplomacy, Dr. Heba, too.
Well, because first of all, if you know who you are going to talk to, you know the message. One of the things that I always tell my students is that if Charlemagne says that if you learn a second language is like learning a second soul, if you know a second culture, it's like having a second soul. And if you have this second soul, you will be able to talk to the other because you are part of the other now. So you need to know the culture. And one of the main things that you need to know, one of the key things that you need to really be careful about is the habits and customs and values of this culture. So I teach my students all the time to read the values of each culture, go deep into these values and see because values are dynamic thing, by the way, they are changeable. The values of the lost generations is slightly different than this generation. It's going to be a little bit more different than the coming generation, etc. So they need to keep pace, and for the media, unless you know the values of the people you are talking to, you will not know what's the message you are delivering to them.
Sure.
Yes, definitely. Well, 2022, Your Excellency, has also witnessed great successes for the Egyptian diplomacy vis-a-vis maintaining peace and stability in the region, and also sharing the preservation of international peace and security. We have the participation in the UN-sponsored peacekeeping operations.
Yes, actually, Egypt one of the forefront countries in order to be in this peacekeeping, and even not just peacekeeping, but peace building operations. And this is very important issue, and because it is so easy to maintain peace, but to build peace, I think it is a very difficult job, and it has a lot of talents and a lot of efforts, a lot of even money sometimes. So I think Egypt is a main source of the peacekeeping operation or the peace building operations. I like the word peace building more than peacekeeping. And so that's why I think we maintain, we gained a lot of respect from the UN Secretary General, and even all the countries in the UN. They are always, trying to have a sort of contribution from our forces and our even engineers and doctors in order to help the other societies and to tackle all this disturbance in some different countries, like in Africa and so on. So I think our role in the international community is so respectable, and in the meantime, we are always keen also to participate with a real, I would say, desire that Egypt would be involved in all these issues with, let us say, different programs, different capacities. And I think so far we can say that we did well for the last, I would say, maybe 50 years. Because, the Egyptian diplomacy is always working very hard in order to maintain this kind of reputation for the Egyptian efforts everywhere. So I'm always in favor of our Egyptian diplomacy, and I'm always, talking very highly about our efforts in different places. And I think the presidential diplomacy now is also playing an important and vital role, actually, to maintain the image of Egypt everywhere.
Yes. Intercultural communication has certain skills. There are certain skills needed in order to maintain this sense of flowing, to have it flowing, and to acquire information. From your opinion, what are the most important skills?
I think it's respect to the other. That's the most
core,
important.
the backbone.
That's it. And understanding that if the other rejects you right now, it's due to stereotypical image, which is wrong. And this stereotypical image has led to what we call prejudice against the person, and then discrimination. If you break this circle, the trio, if you break them by building a correct, if we can say favorable, more down-to-earth stereotypical image, this is what you are doing, by the way, in Nile TV. You are going to break this trio. And if you understand the other, respect the other, try to change with patience the image.
The stereotypes.
Don't be that chauvinistic and think that you need to reject the other as much as the person rejects you. You see in the intercultural communication in particular, or communication between culture, we tend to see our culture as the right one, as the correct one, as the norm. And whatever else is not the norm. It's the thing that should be changed. That's something we need to understand. We need to raise awareness of the people for it. And if we understand this, we will see that this is the main challenge and obstacle that's facing intercultural communication.
Yes. A final word, Your Excellency, to end and wrap up this wonderful panel discussion for tonight?
Well, I think you should be very careful and not trying to impose ideas and traditions on the others.
Yeah.
You have to penetrate, their hearts and their minds in a very, I would say, slow way, without even, trying to push them to some ideas. But you should be very, quiet, and also has a lot of patience in order to transfer your ideas and your traditions and your culture to the others without any forcing or, let us say, imposing ideas on them.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was our panel discussion, a very distinctive one for tonight. I thank so much His Excellency Ambassador Mohamed Oraby, former Minister for Foreign Affairs, Your Excellency, always adding value. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And I thank very much Professor Dr. Heba Nayef, Vice Dean for Instructional Affairs. Really honored and privileged to have you.
It's always an honor to be with you.
A great panel tonight. Thank you so much for coming. And I thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. I'm Taghreed Hussein. Many thanks for watching. Tomorrow, another theme on the Daily Debate.